Without further ado, I'd like to hand this off to Mark Martina and let him introduce himself.
Great. Thanks, Brian. And everybody, welcome. So as Brian was saying, my name is Mark Martina. I'm a system architect and managing partner with TechD. And with me today, I also have Francis Fabrizio. Francis is a longtime developer using a variety of different products, including Cognos, Power BI, Tableau, Click, I think a few other things floating around. Just to give you a little bit of a backstory, I'm not really a slide guy, but just give you a backstory of who we are. TechD, we're essentially a software implementer, anything involving data. So extracting data, ETL, data warehousing, data lakes, and all the analytics that go on top of it, along with governance, security, AI, machine learning. So everything through the entire life cycle of extracting data from your source systems to having the picture perfect report plopped on a CEO's desktop. Pretty much who we are, what we do. My goal today is to kind of give you a look at both products, answer whatever questions we can about, but give you kind of an honest opinion of, what they look like, how they compare, where there really is no overlap. And there's definitely a good amount of that as well. But just make sure at the end of the day, everybody has a better feel for, what the two products are and which one's best for you. Or maybe you need both, who knows? All right. If there's no questions, I think at this point, we're gonna kind of start it off. And I think the format I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth between the two products a little bit, so you can actually see a little bit of a compare of how you would do something in one for something in the other. If anybody has any questions, feel free to log in, say hello in the chat window, and we'll see what we can do about answering it for you as best as possible. So one thing I like to start off with is from a difference point of view. It seems that Power BI is still client-based, not completely, but when it comes to server here, when it comes to actually creating all of your different apps, there we go. Everything in Power BI starts with Power BI Desktop. Once you've actually brought some things in, you can publish them. And once they're published, they're now available on the web. Everybody can get to it. Everybody can create dashboards. They can modify existing dashboards, things like that. But everything starts off with Power BI Desktop, goods and bads. It's easier, I think, to utilize a client-based desktop tool than it is to use a web interface. The bad is that you have to download the interface, configure the interface, and it's Microsoft, so obviously it only works on Windows. So I have one client, and again, I'm going to try to give some real life examples if I can, but I have one client who essentially brought in a few different tool vendors, and Microsoft was the first one they cut out because half of their PCs were Macs. Right? So half their users have Macs, so that means that they literally cannot create anything from scratch, no new content. And that was a problem for them. It looks like there's more and more functionality available on the web. So maybe, a year from now, 2 years from now, that won't be the case. But currently, whenever you do anything in Power BI, you've got to start off with the desktop. So let me open it up. And so here's your desktop. And this is kind of the screen that you're with. I stole Francis's ID, so it's got his name in the top right. He created a project already called Project Blueprint, which you can open up and I can show you a couple of those things. But I think for this step, I'm actually going to just bring in a flat file and kind of show you the life cycle of bringing in some data, connecting to it, creating a dashboard, publishing it, and give you a feel for how the whole flow would work end to end. So step one, if I'm doing something brand new, I click on Get Data, and it gives me a bunch of different options. I can import from Excel, which seems to be very common. It gives me a variety of things as well. Parquet files, Access Database, DB2, SQL Server. So there's definitely a lot going on. And everything's actually listed out, which is pretty good. So there's definitely a lot of things you can connect to. I have not obviously connected to all of these. I've been pretty much using some of the basic stuff. So keeping with that, I'm going to go with Excel. And it's good. So if you want to kind of filter it out, you can just select which category is appropriate for you. Obviously, they're big fans of Azure. But file, again, obviously has things like CSV. And we're going to pick Excel workbook and hit connect. Now it wants me to find an Excel workbook, and I've got a sample one. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But why I like it is because it has 3 tabs in it that are supposed to be joined together. So this was kind of one of the tests I ran on both products because it's kind of common. So I've got 3 tabs in it. One tab's got organization listed out with an org key. Next tab has the product listed out, product key, all the product details, and then sales, which would be like your fact table, which has an org and a product key. So that's where your join's going to be. So if I load it in, first of all, I can transform the data. So if I want to, I can click on transform data. It'll take me into this other screen that allows me to do some types of modifications on the data. So I come in here and then there's this kind of syntax at the top. It's a way of filtering different rows, columns out, things like that. And applied steps is here, which is kind of nice. So if there's a step you actually create, you don't like that step, you can literally exit out and go away with it. So from that perspective, I think it's actually kind of cool, but I think it's also a little limiting on what you can and cannot do. Again, I am more of a Cognos person because I've been using Cognos for years, but Cognos is definitely user-centric now, but it wasn't before. So let me just kind of close and apply here. So it has under the covers all the ability to kind of get to your low-level thing. So if I wanted to say, scrap it to the entire GUI, I could just cut and paste an entire SQL statement in there and be done with it, right? But what is nice about this is, let's say I like the data as is, no changes. If I come over here and I click on my model, it brings it in. Here's a schema diagram, and it actually goes through and it joins everything up for you automatically. All right. Drag it around a little bit, definitely spreads it out a little bit. And I don't have a lot of screen on here because I'm remoted in this server, but there it is. So it's essentially my 3-table star schema. If I want to tweak, I can just highlight it and it'll show me what's going on. But if I want to tweak it, I can just click on it, right click, go to properties. Shows me the 2 tables, shows me what it's keyed off of. And the interface is pretty good. Right. It has a many to one, and I can change that as well. But it did it for me automatically, which was kind of nice. Right. So I wanted to see what the interface looked like. Here's the interface. It's okay. Honestly, I'm going to show you the Cognos one in a second. I think Cognos is maybe a little bit cleaner, but it's here and it gets the job done. Right. So I hit OK. So now I've got my data in the system, even though I don't know if it's kind of in the system or not. It connects to your actual your Excel file. So I don't know if it really imports an Excel file because it's a client-based tool. So I think how it works under the covers is a little bit different. So if I do the exact same thing here, but I do it with Cognos, I can come over here and close this out. Sorry, I'd already been messing around with Cognos. I close everything out. Here's my Cognos screen, right? So unless you're an old school Cognos person, you're not really using any client tools anymore. Framework managers out there, to be honest, most clients are still using it just because they're historical clients. There's no reason to really rewrite it unless there's a certain feature or functionality that you want to go with. But everybody who's brand new with Cognos, they don't really install any client tools at all, right? So the difference here is if I want to work with that same Excel file, I can go up here to upload files. And then what I can do is just pick the one I want. So I got TechD multi-tab and I hit open. And how it works under the covers is completely different. So it just takes that whole data set and loads it in the Cognos itself. Cognos takes it, stores it in what's called a Parquet file. So it's fast to work with. And now it's in the system. The way things are organized is completely different as well. Cognos is kind of geared more for, it feels like enterprise, while Microsoft is definitely good for the smaller group. But once you get kind of larger in the enterprise, I feel like it might get a little bit more challenging. So example, when I upload data in the Cognos, it doesn't just stick it everywhere people can find it because it assumes there's a lot going on and a lot of people. So what it does under content, it goes under my content. All right. And if I take a look, multi-tab, 111, this is the one I just uploaded. And you can tell it says Excel file, has a little icon that tells you what everything is. If you like the big icon view, which seems to be what Microsoft does, fine, great. If not, you can change it as well and go to a different view too. Which is here somewhere, but I think that's actually in the other screen. But what I can do is now I have my file uploaded and there's a couple options here. So I go right to a dashboard, right? Or I can create what's called exploration. Exploration is kind of its AI interface. But I can't create a report yet. So Cognos is a little bit different than Power BI. Power BI is like a solid dashboarding tool, but doesn't really have reporting. And there's a big difference. So they say they do reports, you can put reports in there, but it's not quite the same thing. So much that Cognos and IBM actually have a separate tool designed for reporting, and they have a separate tool for the modeling. Right? And it's called a data module. So if I create a data module based off this, you'll notice it looks very similar to what I did in the Power BI desktop, right? So I've got my 3 different tabs. If I click on them, it gives me a sample of what it looks like. So it's very similar. So it's a different interface. One's a client-based tool, one's a window-based tool, one connected to the Excel file, the other one I'm uploading the Excel file, but in the end, it's still giving me something very similar. If I click on relationships, I'll notice here, same thing, right? It already created the relationships for me automatically. So in this case, between Power BI, Cognos, kind of seems like a push. Different ways of getting around things, but still does the same thing. If I right click, instead of properties, I go to edit relationship, right? Now my interface here is completely different. It still kind of shows you the same thing. My columns that are matched are right there. So it shows me those. I can refresh and see sample data. I can see where it overlaps. So it's a little bit different. I feel like this one's, because I've used this kind of in professional life a little bit, I feel like this one's a little bit cleaner because if you have a very large amount of columns, right now I'm just looking at an Excel file, but if I'm looking at a table that's got 10, 20, 30, 50, 1,000 columns, that's a little high, a couple hundred columns, I can search for it because there's so many. And then when I do click on it, it shows me an example of what there is. And then based upon that, I can actually match the selected columns. And then I have the same options as well for my many to one, left, inner join, right outer join, things like that. So I feel like there's a slight advantage here when it comes to the actual interface to change the relationships. But overall, getting the data into the system, creating the relationships seem pretty easy. But there is another step here. So that metadata layer is kind of just part of the upload process with Power BI. But here, it's kind of a separate step. It's an easy step, but it's a separate step. And I do have the ability here to also make changes to the data, tweak things. I can right click on here. I can copy data. I can put different filters on it. I can also clean the data a little bit. So it gives me those interfaces. So one thing I've noticed is when it comes to manipulating the data that's coming into the system, it seems like Cognos is a little bit more flexible. It has more features, more functionality when it comes to that, right? But I mean, similar thought process, I guess, but just more features and functionality here, really. If I want to create a column from scratch, I have a lot of different options. I can also come over here, as I was saying before, I can create a brand new table using SQL. So I can actually write a SQL statement right in here and bring that back. But granted, that's for a more advanced user, right? I think where Microsoft, Power BI really comes to play is it's a little later on the features, but it's easier, right? So less sometimes means more because there's less you can do. As a result, it's easier. But if you're a techie person, you might want to dump in SQL. Right? And somebody was actually mentioning about how it connects. So under the covers, it's saying that Cognos uses a JDBC driver to connect the data sources. Power BI is just using an ODBC driver, which I'm not proficient enough with Power BI to know exactly what it's using under the covers. So everything. Cognos is definitely able to use JDBC drivers, and that's typically what's being used. There might be ones for Power BI as well. I'm not sure. But that's connecting to the data, pulling in data, and that might affect the speed of the data that is pulled in. But from an actual functionality point of view, you definitely have more flexibility with the Cognos platform because it doesn't block out the techie people with the techie skills. It kind of gives you a world that kind of takes care of both people. So if you're a company, you didn't want your users to do anything, you want to just use embedded SQL, easy to do here. If you want to do things like that on the Power BI side, it's really not geared for that. But either way, overall, at this point, it's fairly similar. How you store things is completely different. So I can store them in any different folder I create. If I have permissions to, I can put them in team content, or I can put them in my content. In the case of Power BI, you can share objects with other people. I feel like it's very good for kind of a departmental solution, Power BI. I think if it's an enterprise solution where you have hundreds or thousands of users, it could get a little unruly. Cognos is kind of geared to have, I have clients that have, 5 user licenses of Cognos, but then I have other ones that have 2,500. So I think it definitely goes with you and grows with you. I have a feel from what I've been feeling so far. Power BI is a little limited. I think at some point you could potentially outgrow it. All right, and so this is my data module, and that's your metadata layer. So there's no real data in your data module. It's just kind of the metadata layer. So it's the joins, any calculations you might create, but no data itself. Again, it's all web interface. So if I want to leave here, I just close out. It takes me back to where I was. Now I've got my team content. I created demo, and there's my data module. And you can see here that I can edit it. I can do exploration and dashboard like before, but I can also create a report. Again, that report functionality, if that's something that's important to you, Power BI is more of a dashboarding tool. So it's going to be kind of missing that a little bit. So a good example of a report, right? A 10K or 10Q report, a balance sheet, an income statement. If you're in the finance department, most times I see that finance department leans more towards Cognos and less towards Power BI or Tableau because they're numbers people. They're a little less geared in charts and graphs. They definitely have charts and graphs and things like that, but income statement and a balance sheet, when a CFO is kind of interrogating the numbers, he needs to see those low-level numbers. Cognos is going to give you those low-level numbers in a report. Not as much in their dashboards and not as much in a Power BI dashboard. Right? So let me kind of toggle back and forth here a little bit. So now if I go back here, again, it's a little bit of a different interface, but again, gives me similar data. And again, this is kind of like the data module and the data all together. So in Cognos, it's kind of 2 separate steps. With Power BI, it's kind of all integrated. Like you're creating it no matter what. So that's a little bit of a difference. Now, when it comes to actually, creating a dashboard, right? I'm actually ready to go for a dashboard, right? Because that other step is pretty much gone. It's kind of integrated. So I had a two-step process in Cognos, kind of a one-step process in Power BI. But now the data I'm looking at is identical data, right? So let's say I want to pull something over. Well, if I've got nothing selected, I just select something. It's automatically just going to put it on there, on your canvas, right? So there's my product lines. Might be meaningful to me as is, probably not. So let me add something else to it. Maybe I want to add sales. Then I've got my product line in sales. And by default, that's what it does with it. Now, what's nice is it's a dashboard. I want charts, I want graphs, I want something pretty. So how do I convert that? It's really easy. If you highlight it, let's come over here and click on a chart, any chart. And it just automatically toggles it. And it's all based on what you selected, right? This interface, I think, works really well. Another thing I like about it is it tells me what I pulled in. Right? So I'm taking in product line from under product, and I'm taking in sales from under sales. Right? Great. What if I want to add something else to it? No problem. Quantity shipped. Automatically goes right to that chart because that's what I have highlighted. If I want to create something brand new, I log off, not log off, I essentially click off of it, back onto the main canvas. And I want it based on organization. So I've got my org unit. And you can also start with the chart and then actually drag things over as well. It's completely up to you. Just kind of potato and potato. So I've added a few things here, and then I want to change this into some type of chart, graph, perfect. Now, if I want to go the other way around, I can do that as well. So now, it's whenever you highlight on something, that's what's active when it comes to the fields on the right. So now this one, I want, I don't know, I'll do products, and I'll do sales. And now product and sales comes up automatically based on that chart. You can click off it. Now maybe I want to hit latitude, longitude. It knows automatically that it's latitude and longitude. So it gives me what it thinks is the appropriate chart. I add sales, and I've got sales. If I want to change things around, I just click on it and drag it around. Right. So I've got a tab here, called main tab. If I want to create another tab, no big deal. I hit the plus sign. Now I just kind of keep going. Right. So I want product, and I want a whole bunch of different measures. And I can keep it looking just like this, no problem, or I can change it to something else. It's very simple and very easy to use. Now I'm going to do this same thing on the Cognos side. And I'll be honest, this is a win for Power BI. It's simpler to use, it's easy to use. And I think this is why it draws a lot of people in. I think getting the data into Power BI is a lot less robust. Connecting the data sources, making changes on the fly. Power BI, I think, is expecting an ETL tool or somebody behind the scenes cleaning the data, making the data ready for you. But if your data is ready and you just need to create dashboards, this interface is very simple. Right? And then if I like this, I can just publish it. There's a publish button right here. I click on publish, save changes. Let's do it. Wants me to save it as something. Under downloads, I'll do demo. Yeah. Hit save. And it seems a little bit slow, but while it's doing that, let me toggle back to Cognos. That's what I keep thinking. All right, so now, again, I'm toggling back and forth to give you kind of a different vibe of how the different tools work differently. Right? So if I come over here, I've got my demo data module, right? And let's say I want to create a dashboard. No problem, I create a dashboard. First thing that's different is you have templates. You want a template that you just kind of fill in. You can pick one, or you can just go kind of plain. And that's what I usually do. And that's pretty much what Power BI does. Then if I'm here, what do? Well, I've got the exact same thing. What's the difference? Well, this is on the left. The other guy was on the right. But overall, it's very similar, right? It's the same flat file I uploaded, same joins under the covers, done automatically. I did have that extra step of creating the data module. That data module also gives you a lot of flexibility because I can connect to multiple data sources. The data module is a little less needed when you're just uploading a flat file from Excel. But if I'm uploading 10 flat files, I'm connecting the SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, and Snowflake, and Netezza, I can literally integrate all that into one data module. And so that's why it's a little bit more on the enterprise side. So you do have that extra step, but it takes all of like 2 seconds, and it's worth it. But if I come over here and let's say I do product line, and then I do sales, and maybe unit cost, what I can do is I can just drag them over. This is a little bit different. I've got to kind of drag it over, and it doesn't tell me where it came from. I mean, I can go in here and I can inspect it this way. I can click on fields, and it shows me the name of the fields, shows me where it came from this way. So the data's here, you've got it. But the fact that when I clicked on here, it automatically showed it to me on the left was kind of slick, and it was definitely a little bit easier. Win for the interface there. When it comes to adjusting the charts and moving them around, Cognos has done a lot of leaps and bounds. It's pretty slick as well. Okay. Now, this is a web interface. It's not a client tool. So there's only one tool. You can use any browser you want, but it's probably a little bit more limiting because it is the web interface, but then there's nothing to install. So if I like it the way it is, great. If I want to tweak it, I can tweak the graph, the chart, how it looks by going to the properties. Right. If I want to tweak what chart I'm looking at, I can come up here and I can tweak that as well. So I think this one looks pretty slick, but maybe I want one, that looks just same data, but maybe different look and feel. I can just duplicate it. I've got 2 of them now. I bring it over here, and I just click. So it's going to give me what it recommends based upon what I'm looking at, right? So obviously it likes line and column. That's what it picked. To be honest, I think that looks the slickest. It was a good job. But it also recommends these charts as well, because there's an AI built in. Or if I don't like that, I can actually pick one of the ones down here. And maybe it'll work right, maybe it'll look good, but usually it does a pretty good job. Pack bubble, that's always a good one. So there it is. Again, you can size it any way you want. If I don't like that, I don't even know what that one is. There's some funky ones in here. Heat map is pretty standard, looks good. If I like the color, great. If purple's a little over the top for me, which it is, maybe I want actually some heat colors, I can do that as well. But it's very simple, very to use, and very similar to Power BI. But I do think that the Power BI interface is a little bit more user-friendly. And I like how when you click on something, I can just double click here and it automatically adds it. I think from that respect, it is a little bit nicer. But let me go back here again to my server, and did it save? That's kind of weird. All right, so I'm going to everything's in a workspace. So I'm publishing it to my workspace. Now, I created a dashboard in this tool and then in the desktop tool, and then I published it. I didn't have to. Once I loaded the data, I could have just published it at that point and then done everything in the web interface. So now it's loaded. So what do? Well, I go back to my browser. This tab is Cognos. This one, amazingly or not, is Power BI. I can go to recents. I go to my workspace, and you have to refresh it since I literally just did it. Let me see. Looking for it, 130 demo file. That sounds right. So here's the dashboard, and here's the actual data set. And there's the report, it's calling it. So if I click on it, there it is. And so I've got my main tab, my other tab, I never named it. But as you can see, the interface is similar, but it's not exactly the same. So right now I'm in essentially use it mode, right? So as a user, I can come over here and it has some slickness to it, right? This is in user mode, it's not edit mode. If I want to make changes to this, I click on edit. And now I've got very similar interface to what I had before. So it tells me that, what I'm looking at here has product and sales information in it. So it's the same as before. Overall, it's not quite the same interface. If I want to tweak this data set, adjust it, do things like that, I really can't do that in the web interface. Maybe it's future release, maybe it's not, I don't know, but it's not really available yet. So that's one thing that I'm not a big fan of. I kind of like the web-only interface because I don't have to worry about installing anything on a client tool, updating anything. It just works. Right. But it is nice because once it's out here, users can get to it. And I think that's kind of more the purpose of it. Most users aren't going to create the dashboards, or if they do, they're never going to deal with the underlying data. And this web interface takes it from the data on. So I can work with existing dashboards. I can create my own dashboards, and they call it a report. In Cognos lingo, this would be considered a dashboard and not really a report. Reports are a lot of times prompted, they're bursted out, so you email them with security, and under the covers, multiple people get those reports with different data in it. All that functionality doesn't exist. This is really the dashboarding component. But if I want to come here, like I should have renamed this, so I come over here and rename it. Yeah, call it my list tab, something like that. And you can save it here as well. Now, one thing I was kind of looking at was ask a question. All right, so this is kind of the AI interface. So Cognos has one as well. Cognos is more chatbot based and probably a little bit more mature than this one. But choose one of these to get started. Sort sales by unit cost, I guess. And then it actually just does it. Right. Which product has the highest sales? So I guess this product does, but it doesn't actually give me the sales number. But it does filter everything. It's a little funky. I think it's pretty new. I think it's kind of getting better, but I'm not sure it's quite there yet. One thing I did like was if you want to add more data, there's the get data. So I click on get data. Say changes this report. Sure. Report saved. Get data. Right? Discover content or create new content. So let's say I want to do a file. Local file. Yeah, and this one does seem to allow me to kind of update more data. Let me see. Import Excel data into Power BI, local file, or upload your Excel file to Power BI. I don't want to do that. I think I want to import Excel data as a table. That doesn't make any sense because it should have been. Let's try it again. Yeah, it kind of says it right here. Download Power BI desktop for the best report building experience. So it's the web isn't quite there yet, essentially. But what I was looking for is, I can't find it. Create, here we go. It's under create. So under create, paste or manually enter data. Now, this is something that Cognos does not have, but I thought was slick. Okay. Literally, you can open up Excel. So I come over here and I go to, let's see, where's my data? I go to demo data and let's pick the one that it said didn't have any data in it. So for some reason, it didn't like this flat file being uploaded. This is the one it gave me the error on. I don't know why. I'm not really sure what kind of format it wants. It looks perfect to me. But what I like about this is it's good for a user, right? So what you can do is you can come over here. You can highlight a bunch of columns, not even all of them, just a bunch of them. Hit Control C to copy it. Go back over here and Control V and paste. And so now I've cut and pasted my Excel file right into it, and I can call it paste data, auto create report. And so now it came in here, it took all that data, it automatically charted, graphed it. And then, you know, if I like it, great. If I want to edit the thing, I definitely can. Switch to edit mode, continue. So I can come over here, and if I like that, great. But if I don't, no big deal. I can easily tweak it. Reports, the charts look slick, and product looks, I mean, it looks good. It's easy for users to use. This interface, I can't really complain about it. What happens if I select something that's not appropriate? I wonder what happens. There's nothing on it. Nothing on it. Just gives you an ugly chart. Yeah, it might not have liked whatever I just did. Oh, there we go. It's kind of back. There, that's a little better. And then I can save it as whatever I want. So I just saved my demo test report. And what's nice is if you're not in edit mode, you can still change everything. So if I come over here and I'm not in edit mode, I can be like, okay, visualization type. Let me go with this guy. Values. Well, I'm looking at this one, but I think I want this one. So it's very flexible when it comes to that. The usability, I would say, is high. It's the best way to describe it. So let's toggle back over again. So, you know, I've created a dashboard in Cognos, a few things over. If I want to save it, I save it here. And under demo, I'll call it my demo dashboard. Now it's saved, and I'm in edit mode as well. and I can toggle back between the two different modes. So that's very similar as well. Now, if I come over here and I want to tweak something, same thing. Maybe I want it to be a line chart. There you go. Or if I want to switch it up, I can click on it. It gives me options as well. Just a little bit different on how it does it. So when I click on here in the Microsoft world, I've got something right here I click on. In this case, there's always this menu at the top. So if I click here, I go to here, and I pick whatever I think is appropriate. And then if I'm clicked on this, it matches up to that. So just the buttons in one space at the top versus right here. They actually had it, so it kind of hovered right here, and then they moved it. So for some reason, people didn't like it, I guess. But it's still there. But I can't move anything. It's locked in place because I'm not in edit mode. So if you're not in edit mode, you can do a few tweaks here and there, but that's pretty much it. Right? So that's very high level of kind of the uploading files and dashboard kind of compare. But then there's a few other things that you can do here that I think we really should look at as well. So the one we showed was kind of the natural language processing before. Right? So if I go back to my content, actually I can close this guy out. If I go back to my content and I've got my data module, and I can tell by that little symbol, it's a data module. Right. So in addition to dashboards, I can do what's called exploration. And that's where the natural language processing kicks in. So we showed you something that they had with Power BI. And it's kind of similar here. It's like, where do you want to start with? All right. And what it does is it automatically just starts giving you charts and graphs and things that it thinks are appropriate based on what you want to look at. But then if you click on assistant, so IBM Chat Bot comes into play. Right? So IBM is actually well known for their chatbot with Watson AI built in. And so what they've done in their recent releases, that they've taken that chatbot technology, now they're starting to integrate it in the Cognos. Right? So if what product line has the greatest sales? I ask the question. What it does is it doesn't come back with a chart. It comes back with a variety of charts, and then kind of pick and choose. I got this guy, this one here, got the word one. I've always liked radial. I never really understood the spider one, to be honest with you, but I mean, it is what it is. There's the actual values themselves. But let's see, I like how this looks. Now, one thing that's nice that Power BI definitely doesn't have is you can create dashboard from the chart. Right? So if I click on that, what happens? It goes into the dashboarding tool, takes my data module and says, based upon what you were looking at, I think this would be, at the very least, a great starting point for a dashboard. Right? And it's got two tabs, sales and product line. It has everything already charted out, graph for me, all prettied up. I'm in edit mode. If I like it, great. If I want to tweak something, no problem. I can tweak something as well. So I come over here, this looks good, but I would like this to be a word cloud versus whatever that guy is. And where's my word cloud at? It's not one of the ones that's, what does it recommend? No, there's a goal. Bubbles, all right. It's kind of looking for word cloud. Where are you, word cloud? It's alphabetical for your convenience. There's our word cloud. So you put the word cloud in there. And if I click on something, it automatically filters and things like that. So this is a big difference from Power BI. Right? The AI in Cognos Analytics is definitely more advanced. The natural language processing, the ability for it to actually just come in here and create dashboards for you automatically, I think is pretty slick. And it seems to be constantly getting improved on every time. The other thing that's a big difference as well is actually creating a report. And there's a lot of confusion. So our data module in Cognos is essentially a data set in Power BI. Power BI, it's called data set. And that data set can contain not just the data, but also the dashboards. It seems like the individual dashboards are called reports. Here, they're called dashboards because They have reports as well, and they differentiate between the two pretty heavily. Right? So if you go to report usually has a different feel to it, different use case. Select the widget. What do I want to see? I want to just see a list of data. Now, it's not something that's pretty in a dashboard. So it's not something you see all the time in a dashboard. If I want to come over here and, I want to see this organization level, and I can actually have it in design mode, or there's different modes, because this is designed to create pixel perfect reports. Example, I have one client that literally uses this to generate their invoices. It runs all these reports late at night, saves them to the file system. They get printed out automatically, and it's got the client address on the top left. Somebody gets tri-folded, put in an envelope, and sent out. Right? Because it's designed to create picture perfect reporting. Dashboards aren't like that. Right? If I want to look in page preview mode, I can do that, and I can just start dragging things over. I can also double click here as well. And so you notice this is a completely different tool set than the dashboarding tool, and it has to be. It really does, right? Because what you're doing is completely different. The features that are available here are completely different from a dashboard. So under the covers, it's creating this query. I've got all these different options. So I can create tables, lists, crosstabs, hyperlinks. I can have prompting. So when I run this report, it might actually ask me, well, what product type are you looking for? Or what organization name? What country? Something that's not even displayed here. And then the report will bring back that data. So one report that's prompted can give you, endless permutations. And that's the big difference between this and a dashboard. I've never seen a prompted dashboard before, because why would you? Dashboard's designed to be interactive. You don't prompt, you just do it because you're there. This is designed to be interactive because maybe I want to schedule it to run. Security is also a big difference between Cognos and Power BI. Security is very integrated in Cognos. If you want a system that's completely locked down or very flexible in security, Cognos is pretty much number one. And I can lock it down based upon feature, based upon data sets, based upon rows of data, based upon columns of data. So I can make it so that I'm allowed to see sales, but I'm not allowed to see cost. And so if I look over here, it'll probably say 0 for all the costs. If somebody else runs the exact same report, they'll actually see the cost numbers. So it's a big difference. I can add my logo to this, make it really pretty. And then the whole purpose of it is that you would most likely usually run it as, if you want it picture perfect, PDF, but you can also dump it right to Excel as well. Then you've got a picture perfect PDF, and this is not very pretty. I didn't do very much to it. Let's close out the tab, but you can do all of that, filtering, prompting, everything. Alignment, changing your background colors. It's very flexible because, again, it's supposed to be picture perfect. So whatever you have, how ugly of a report it is, you can actually emulate it in Cognos. Reporting. Dashboards are less flexible because why would you need it picture perfect like this? This is being mailed to a client. This is being printed out. This isn't being tacked onto a 10K report. The reports are. So it's a big difference. There's a filter. Create a custom filter or exclude something. So this is something that's completely different. And that's why you have things like jobs. Right? So if I save this report, my demo report, and I just close out of here, I can come back to my content in my report. I can come back over here. I can create a job. So I can have 5, 10, 50 reports that run simultaneously, that run one at a time. that get kicked off by a database job, that get kicked off by some kind of event, something third party related, or I can just come over here to the properties of it and schedule it to run. I'll create a new schedule. I want it to run Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I want it to run at 8 a.m. What are my options? I don't want to just run it. I want to run it as PDF, not HTML. I also want it as Excel. There's also Excel data, which is the data dump. And I want to email it. No recipients. I want to email it to myself, 3 other people. Here's the message I want to put in the email. I want to include the report itself, not just a link to the report, but I can do either or both. Hit save, and I've just scheduled this report to run. It'll run Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 a.m. So this component, there's really no compare on the Power BI side. So, but if you're comparing the 2 tools, you've got to compare kind of all the features in the tools. So that was one of the biggest differences. So there's that. And another one that was a little bit of a difference too was if I go to my data module, one other thing I can do is I can create what's called a data set. And I didn't really see anything like this on the Power BI side. Right? So if I'm pulling in data, now if I'm pulling in from a flat file, it doesn't matter. But let's say I'm pulling in data from some huge database. This query runs all the time. The users keep hitting it. It takes 5 minutes for the query to come back. Well, if I wanted to, I could say, well, they need this column. They need this column. Let me preview it a little bit. And they need a lot of the measures. Right? But what I can do is I can do this, save this, in what's called a data set. If I hit save, it's going to want to save it or save and load. If I hit save and load, a data set is essentially cached data on the Cognos server. So if you have a slow moving query or slow moving database, what you can do is you can alleviate that. So I've got one client that has a lot of problems with their database performance. They pull in a couple 100,000 rows of data every night. And then the reports and dashboards run off that data set. And now it's fast. And you can schedule it to refresh every night. If I close out of here, and I go down, there's my data set. I create a dashboard right off that data set. Or if I want to create a report off of it, I can do that too. But again, the report we create requires that data module, that metadata layer. Now, there is no way I can just cut and paste data right into Cognos. That was definitely an advantage on the Power BI side. But the data I uploaded, if I do want to adjust it, I can always replace that file or append to it. So let's say I get a weekly or monthly file. I can just come over here, find it again, and then append the next month's worth of data. Or I can come over here and same interface, find it again, wipe it out and replace it. So I try to duplicate a lot of these things with report building tool in Power BI, and it's just not really there yet. The functionality, the flexibility isn't there. It's a dashboarding tool. It really is. And so I actually put together just kind of some pros and cons of what I thought based upon using the 2 tools. I thought from a user perspective, which is obviously very important. I think once you've got a dashboard or at least some data in there into the system, I thought the dashboards were very easy to use. They're pretty intuitive, and they had a slick look and feel. Cognos has definitely come a long way in the last year or 2 when it comes to look, feel of the dashboards and the charts. Well, Power BI ones are still better. They're getting there. Maybe they'll be there soon, but they definitely are still better. And Cognos does allow you to use third-party dashboard graphs and things like that. It supports, I forget what the technology, essentially Java dashboard, Java charts, but it can do it, but I rarely see clients actually do that. So what it comes with out of the box, I mean, you can cut and paste things from other tools as well if you want to, which is good. So your end result will look really good. But what it comes with out of the box without cut and pasting from some other tech, Power BI is definitely still a little bit better, right? Cutting and pasting data right from Excel into Power BI, I thought was really slick. I also think it's something that users would use a lot. I mean, it's not hard to upload a file, but I thought it was kind of a cool add-on. And from what I hear, and I don't know what all the pricing is, but the word on the street is that it's cheaper than a lot of the competition. They use the word free all the time. Power BI, it's definitely not free. Maybe they tried that kind of at starting off. It's not now, but I think it's cheaper than a lot. Things I did not like about it. I do not like the fact that you have a client-based tool. And I think they're trying to get away from it, but they're definitely not there yet, because when I'm on the web-based tool, first thing it says is use the client-based tool for a better experience. So the client is better than the than the web version, and there's no client for Mac. So if you're a Mac shop, you might want to steer clear. Right? Only support for Windows. Not a big fan. Limited AI functionality, so it has some of that natural language processing built in. Maybe they're moving that way, but it's not really there yet. The detailed list reports, that functionality, prompted reports, things like that. I didn't see anything that really compared. Right. It has the joint functionality, but it's a little limiting, in my opinion, and very rigid when it comes to formulas. I'm a TechD guy, I'm used to Cognos. There's literally nothing you can't do. Again, in your particular case, maybe you don't need to do all these crazy things, but I like the option. Right. All right. Now it's Cognos Analytics with Watson. It's 100% web-based. All you need is a browser. Thing just works. You can use a tablet. In theory, you could use a phone, but that's not practical. It's more enterprise, in my opinion. I can see, I've got clients that have hundreds and thousands of users, hundreds and thousands of reports, and things are easy to organize, keep secure, and I'm not really feeling that with Power BI yet. Right? Again, the detailed reports and the strong security are also very big differentiators. And I like being able to just click a button and have it automatically create a dashboard. Cons, it's probably a little bit more pricey in Power BI is my guess. Again, I haven't done a one-on-one compare, but just from what I hear in the field, and Cognos is fairly reasonably priced now. It kind of surprises a lot of people, but I still think Power BI is probably a little bit on the cheaper side, at least when you start off. And the biggest thing is I think their dashboards have a little less pop. There's things you can do to kind of get it there, but out of the box, easy to use with the users. It's not quite there yet. It's close. And if you need all the other functionality, I think it gets it done. But if all you want is a dashboarding tool, that's pretty much Power BI. But if you need like an enterprise system, high amounts of security, detailed reports, a lot of integration between the two, then I think Cognos is still definitely the way to go. And Cognos has made leaps and bounds over the last few years, so it seems to be getting better and better all the time. And people are talking about, REST APIs, support for third-party graphs. There's also an SDK app. So if there's certain things you want to do, you can use the software development kit and do it as well. So there's a lot of possibilities. So your end product in Cognos can and would be better, but you need a little bit of tech knowledge behind the scenes. And for some people, they just, sometimes less is more. But overall, I'm still a Cognos guy. If I had a choice between the two, I would pick Cognos, but I definitely see a need for Power BI for certain shops, especially I think smaller mom and pop shops. But that's our 2 o'clock mark. Anyone have any questions? Hopefully, I covered a lot of things. I only had an hour, 2 solid products. I gave at least a high level overview of the 2 products. Any questions, thoughts?
Yeah, and if there's any outstanding questions, feel free to send an email, and we're happy to respond after the fact as well. Mark, thanks for taking us through the two products. The demonstration was insightful, and really appreciate, kind of comparing the two.
Thanks, appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. If you did register, we're most likely going to send you a link to the video, slide deck, some type of follow-up email, so you'll have more information. If anybody needs some type of assessment or look over what the current environment looks like, just let us know. That's why we're here. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. With that, we will end the webinar. Have a good afternoon.